So we're going to look at the Bledisloe Cup. The Bledisloe Cup kicked off last weekend with a game that wasn't part of the Rugby Championship but was the first test of the Bledisloe Cup. A change I actually have reflected on and like now, because it means that the third Bledisloe test, which so often is a dead rubber, no longer is.
Yeah, that's true. It still has stakes in the Rugby Championship as far as points and all of this. I think it is one of the only, like, all the scheduling's been thrown up in the air with COVID, but I actually wouldn't mind seeing that one stick around post, you know.
For sure. We just don't get enough deciding tests in Bledisloe to justify doing it the other way.
I think so, yeah. Harsh on the Wallabies, but it's true, you know.
It's totally true. I think they accept it. But we had the All Blacks taking on the Wallabies in Eden Park last Saturday, 33-25. It finished.
8-point game, you know, close. The All Blacks, the better team won, but it was closer than you might have expected. That one.
It was in the end. It was in the end. I mean, the Wallabies put together, I think, 3 tries in the last 12 minutes. Yeah. 2 in the last 6, 1 in the last play. They were 33 points to 8 down, and the All Blacks really, really did get motoring in that third quarter.
As they have done before as well. The last few years, that has been the story. Good competitive showing from the Wallabies. After a sluggish start that sees the All Blacks take the lead, they grab a nice try to nearly level it up before half time, then they throw it away before half time.
That was it. That was such a huge moment, because they were getting pulverised a little bit. I mean, first of all, somebody needs to wire the Australian mouth shut, because you know what, if you want to take the All Blacks on at scrum time, that's a good idea. That's well and good. You have a good scrum. Don't mention it. Yeah. Don't lay down the marker. Don't give them something to pin to the notice board and say, listen to what these guys said. Like, sometimes Australians just can't help themselves.
It's true.
Like, just be a little more subtle. I think they could have taken them on at scrum time, but the fact that they said it, and it was telling them that after
cards closer to the chest and all that. It's
exactly.
Like they're the dude playing poker going like, whoa, royal flush, mate, that beats everything. Like, what are you doing telling me? I fold.
Exactly. So that much was a little frustrating. It was telling that, you know, after an interesting start to the game where it was 0-0 for a large period, the first points actually came from a scrum penalty to the All Blacks against James Slipper, who'd been talking it up, which was unfortunate from a Wallaby point of view. Their line-out also got taken to the cleaners early doors as well.
Actually,
so
that's true.
The All Blacks went after them at set piece, in fact, and kind of found an edge there, certainly in the early goings of the game.
Yeah, first quarter, that was the story. They couldn't get a line-out off for the first few minutes. The first 4, I think, went awry. It was pretty bad to watch, and then the scrum, obviously, as you say, yielding the first points. But it goes to it's a trend that has continued from the France series, where they're starting slowly and they're getting punished because they're playing against both France and the All Blacks are teams that will punish you for slow starts, and they had been, but they managed to dig themselves out with a lovely set piece try that was absolutely beautiful, applying Amosa over the top of the line out to Baisami on an excellent short line that he took so aggressively and fended off one man, and then found an inside ball to Kellaway, who was running a lovely tracking line. It was just a textbook.
It was a
strike
really
move,
well taken set piece.
Really
It goes to show the importance of set piece to this team as a point of beginning for their offense. They do love the set piece. It helps them set up. They have loads of strike plays, almost more than any top tier team.
Dave Rennie's always loved a good set piece strike play, and the Wallabies do as well. And that was a great example of it. And it came at a great time. And granted, Lolosio missed the kick, which was to become a theme, but they got them back to within a score, and that was at within a point even, and it's that should have been the halftime score, but sadly it wasn't.
Yeah, and it was Michael Hooper, who otherwise had a fabulous game and was really, really game as he always is. After a brilliant French series, he gave it everything, but like he slipped ahead of a kicker on the exit immediately after scoring.
They have been very harsh on that this year. It's become a point of
whiz, though, that's a 7-point error as it turned out, and they'd only got 5 from their try, which they had before half-time, and I'm sure they felt like that, because that's a huge psychological blow against the All Blacks, who love to score just before half-time. If you can get in instead, that's massive, and they did. And then they just give it up immediately after. Hooper drifts offside, the kick goes ahead, the All Blacks get the pen. Naturally enough, they're not thinking 3-pointer, they go straight to the corner, work a forwards try that's finished by Severis, who gets the quick dot down. But it was all about the power game and the slow build. It wasn't quite the free-flowing New Zealand in that first half.
No,
I would cite the Wallaby defence. Paisami on defence, and a few other guys were really stepping up, just making good tackles, Hooper being one,
managing the space, managing the width of the field quite well. And actually the All Blacks were guilty of just over eagerness. They didn't earn the right to go wide before they flung it wide. They were putting 3 passes on every play from the opening whistle, and they were getting swallowed up by a capable defense at the beginning, and it was good to see. There were definitely encouraging signs all over from the Wallabies, but there was the repeat of not just that costly try, but also the momentum it carries. And then the third quarter again, which has been the difference between these sides in the Bledisloe Cup over the last 10 years, really, is just that the third quarter the All Blacks come to play and they blow them away very often.
It was so close to not being so as well. The Wallabies started the half well. They had a chance to put up the first points of the half, which Nulisio missed. They were moving the ball okay, but the All Blacks were defending them gamely, and then just that huge moment when Paisami off his left throws a speculative ball out to the wing. There isn't really much shape or anything else on. It just gives Mo'unga a chance to read it from deep, and he comes up and makes a sublime read. Richie Mo'unga, perfect. Chip picks off the ball and runs in for a decisive blow in the game, which really was. And then the All Blacks went off. They scored an absolute worldie of a try that gets chalked off.
Yes, the Aaron Smith forward. Like that was everything you love about attacking footy. Like right from under your own sticks. The 10's going to do a bit of footwork, put a bit of footwork on it, find a seam, offload, up the left hand side, back inside, offload, and they end up go up the left hand side until halfway, and then they come back the other way, and you get so many touches from forwards and backs linking, and then a try in the right hand corner at the end of it. It was very tough from a Wallabies. I know it was called off, but from a Wallabies point of view, it was hard to see how they could defend it. There's an initial error from Harry Wilson, who runs up too quickly and gets stepped and doesn't see the danger of Mo'unga coming. Mo'unga was absolutely brilliant, by the way, but he just steps inside him and goes, and then from there on out it's just flawless rugby from the All Blacks. Perfect tracking lines. They got that Rugby 08 tracking line going where there's just a line of them always on either side, and they just come flooding after it, picking perfect passes one after another. I think the only chance they have, the Wallabies, to shut it down is like a desperate Salakaya Loto effort on Retallick after Retallick gets the ball, but it's in such open field, and Retallick has the step on him, and Retallick is still Brody Retallick. It's true.
So he's
not the first man to get shrugged off by Brody Retallick, and he won't be the last.
And that was it. But it was an illustration of what the All Blacks have been working on as far as their skill set is concerned. And while it didn't quite happen for them in those early goings, and this offense has much to learn
try, that would-be try as well, there's still a fair bit of danger there. And then you saw with the Havili try as well, some good movement of the ball, finding
Aaron Smith, that whole sequence was excellent. I mean, he responded to that forward pass really well.
Yes, he did. That's true. And in his 100th test, which it was, he was seminal in setting the tempo the All Blacks wanted to ultimately ice the game in the third quarter, which is what they did. As you were saying, it was 33-8 going into the final 15 odd minutes, so it was already game over. But with it being game over, they got a little loose once the changes came in, and it didn't enhance them. They didn't quite get the impacts they wanted, and in fact, when we combine things like Tupou and Phillip coming off the bench for the Wallabies,
Uelese
and Bell, the pack managed to get supremacy.
Right.
They were dominant at scrum and line out maul time, and then suddenly they were finding tries. Tom Banks was getting a brace of tries in quick succession. That was just from good movement of the ball based on good dominating of the collision zone. That came from a lot of good bench impact.
Yeah, and I mean, Ian Foster has been talking about skills and discipline, as we mentioned on the show before, in terms of his off-season message, and I think the skills are coming on. Discipline struggled. They ended up conceding 18, double the amount of penalties, much of them towards the end of the game. Yeah. But I mean, like, if discipline is a work on, they got to work on it, because as soon as the side puts up a tempo on them and gets into their 22, they just kill the ball. Yeah. Every time they just kill the ball, and they're devils for it. They really are. But refs are picking them up on it.
Well, maybe it's a symptom of they don't have clean Sam Cane and they available to them. They have wily Sam Whitelock, and he's as guilty as any, if not the most guilty, of the I'll just stick my arms in here where they don't belong and try and kill this right here, right now. And he does, and they did. And 18 is a lot for a test side to be conceding discipline wise, especially when you're citing it as an issue. And just the way they started the game with a bit of too much eagerness to go wide, not enough respect for what the Wallabies have on defence, and ultimately keeping the score down. Like that scrum penalty that opened the scoring came nearly towards the end of the first quarter, and a lot of that time was spent with the All Blacks trying to find the edge and being swallowed up by the Wallabies. So their start will be displeasing to them, but similarly their finish, they got disjointed, and then when they were disjointed they went straight to the, as you say, kill the ball, and they invited what is still a very dangerous Wallabies side into the game. Like the Wallabies ultimately scored 4 tries in Eden Park, which is is, compare that to, if you're watching earlier in the pod, we were talking about the Springboks, and they haven't conceded more than 2 tries in over 2 years in a single game, and then you're coughing up 3 in the last 15 minutes is no good.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I think the Wallabies are a good side. I think they have a good pack, but I think I would give huge credit to the starting All Black forward pack, especially that front row of Bauer and now Lala, the scrum time winning penalties, and then Retallick and Whitelock taking the line out away.
Yeah,
that was huge. It was a huge psychological blow to the Wallabies from which they didn't recover. They needed that set piece going their way, and the All Blacks took it away from them. I'd also highlight Aaron Smith. I thought was brilliant, and David Havili just gets better and better at 12.
I'm glad he grabbed his bit of try. A bit of meat back out on the wing where he's well used to being.
Finish.
But very technical winger's finish that he's had in him before. But he is growing into that role as the All Black 12, which I really do think he should be for the foreseeable future based on form. He's really good, and he's more in keeping with what they want from their centres. He's got the skills, he can play in the wide channels, but he does have a good passing acumen as well, and he gets them just a little wider and a little bit more dangerous.
Lovely feel for the position, lovely feel. And Anton Leonard-Brown was good. Unfortunately, he's got injured, and I enjoyed Mackenzie's showing as well. I did like the instinct to go wide. I liked the offloading. There are work-ons.
Yeah, there was a little bit of ring rust, perhaps. It was a step up that they hadn't made yet. Their kind of Pacific Islander celebration of the way they opened their 2021 season with Tonga and Fiji, both at home. It was good preparation for them in terms of like just the spirit of throwing the ball around. But they were a little shocked in that opening quarter by a really more physical, like not even more physical, but more organised and disciplined defence.
They weren't finding the seams they usually did. They were in July, but that will come in time, and they still managed to find some lovely tries in the second half as they put it together.
True enough. One key point before we move on from that game though is Noah Lolesio, who I have a lot of time for and has had a great month and a half between the series win against France that he was their 10 for, because James O'Connor's still out and he is still their 10. But yeah, he missed on many points. I think it was 12 points overall that he left behind from the kicking tee. Some of them tricky kicks, but some of them not so tricky, and a lot of them had to go over. Context wise, had to go over didn't. Big moments, conversions. Some of the tries. The one that was at 33-18 was frustrating enough as well, but also just even the kick to make it 6-3. There was a kick that came like 2 minutes before the Moonga intercept try. Like all of these ones, chances to get points on the board. He looked as frustrated as anyone. He did. He's actually he was, when the last one went over, he gave a sort of a disgusted, sarcastic look to it's like now it goes over when it couldn't matter less kind of thing.
I mean, it might have just been an off day for him. I thought his general all round play was excellent. He moved the ball really well. He got the Wallaby attack moving. His little grubber for Tom Banks's second try was inch perfect.
Excellent.
Passing game was all good. Had some clever kicks, mixed his game nicely, looks a very, very comfortable 10.
He does.
There were some good performances in that Wallabies team. I mean, some of the pack struggled more than others. I think Slipper had a tough game against Nepo Lalala, wasn't able to get the scrum going the way he'd like, but I thought Darcy Swain was excellent. Salakaya Loto, his partner, struggled a little bit with the physicality, but Valentini and Hooper stepped up massively. Huge performances from both of them, and then Harry Wilson at 8 struggled mightily. In fact,
actually, I thought their whole bench impact made better inroads. Like it's a shame that it was already kind of over by that stage because of the All Blacks clinicality. But you can see how if they're in a game come 60 odd minutes, if they're within one score, you launch guys like Tupou, and in that instance it was Phillip and McWright coming in. They all added a lot of impetus. Bell as well in the front row. There was a lot of good. Lacey grabbing that try, the peel from them all, very dynamic.
And having that line out working well with Phillip and Lacey off the bench, they'll be happy with all of that. So broadly speaking, I think they'll be pleased with the way that their stock's finished, and they're still in a position where they're not quite sure what their first team is. And we'll see this week that they've made some changes as well. But the Wallabies are a coming force. It was a bit of an ask, but fair play to them for keeping the score down. I think that does add to the dynamic going into this week. It was 33-8, and with time still on the clock, you were fearing the worst.
There's a bit less intrigue there as well. You're thinking like next is 40, then they're hunting for 50, and it's like all of that. Like,
not fun.
No fun at all.
The Wallaby team from about 5 or 6 years ago would have shipped 50 on that day. I don't doubt it.
No, I don't doubt it. There's no doubt in my mind that the Wallabies are much better now than they were a few years ago. Or even like the worst I think I've seen from the Wallabies was that Lions tour that happened in 2013, like where they were a rudderless entity really. They had a few quality players in the back line, but their pack were nowhere really, not on the level to compete, and then ultimately they got destroyed at every scrum. You look at the likes of Tupou, who's in this team, and it's just his night and day. This guy Tupou's coming off the bench. This is a much better team, and they're playing a much more cohesive style, and they're putting it up. They're scoring 4 tries in Eden Park, which is not something to be sniffed at. That even in a losing effort, that's very, very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. We're going to move on now and just look at the game itself. Bledisloe 2, the All Blacks against the Wallabies. This is a juicy game. Obviously, this is the first Rugby Championship game. Takes place this Saturday, 14th of August at Eden Park. This is going to be a 7:05 p.m. kickoff local time, 8:05 in the UK and Ireland.
That's right.
In the morning on Saturday. Pretty exciting game. The referee's going to be Brendan Pickrell, the great missing man from the Lions tour, and we'll get to see him with the whistle rather than in the TMO box as well, or not as the case was. But yeah, we'll see. It's another New Zealand official, as is kind of what has been done all through COVID. We have kind of indigenous refs reffing, which is actually fine, to be honest. Like, as far as the neutrality is concerned, it doesn't, like, they are impartial, and if anything, they tend to kind of not want to give decisions to their home side, as is what I've noticed, more so than the other way around. Somewhat,
so
needs must. I wouldn't worry about it from an honesty point of view. So it was as far as the colour going into this, the All Blacks do now find themselves on the hill.
1-0
as far as retaining their crown as Bledisloe champs, which they always do.
Well, it's been 18 in a row, so it could be 19 in a row come Sunday morning. But it's still game on very much in the context of this. Just in the broad colour as well, we still have had these sides meeting 170 times in total, with New Zealand up 117 to Australia's 45, with 8 draws over the course of their history. They played a lot of times. There are many other nations that don't have anywhere near as storied a record.
Next time the Springboks play the All Blacks, it'll be just 100 games between those two. So 170 is a lot, but still 45 wins and 8 draws. Not bad from the Wallabies, but they do have to go back to 1986 until the last time they won at Eden Park.
That's still true. Yeah,
and Eden Park has been the hardest place in the world, as we all know, for teams to beat New Zealand, and that's going to be a factor going into this weekend, no question. The Wallabies had another moment in the build up to this, which I didn't love. Now, perhaps it's been taken out of context to some amount, but basically, I think it was Andrew Kellaway, was suggesting that the All Blacks have lost their intimidating aura.
See, what?
Despite
even if
their
you
opening,
think that, why would you say it?
Yeah, I know. He was on. What was he on? His great name, the Big Sports Breakfast, in Australia, and he was giving it. Well, he was saying, they've lost their aura. We're going to get in. All the pressure's on them. And we're going to go after them because they have to win at Eden Park, and it's a free shot for us, was basically his line. But one wishes that they would just dial all of that big up themselves, chap. But that's just not in their nature.
No.
So they're going to try and poke the bear again.
Yeah, and see what happens when they ride out to face that haka in Eden Park, and the pressure to it didn't look like the pressure was on the All Blacks last time they played last week. It looked more like young Dolacia was missing a few kicks, that kind of talk is problematic potentially. It certainly flies against what we do as Irish punters,
which is almost the inverse,
the exact inverse, which is a problem as well. Where it's like, we have no hope now. You'd be writing us off before the series begins now. No, there's no chance for our boys, and then they come in without having said any of that and perform really well. The Wallabies probably the inverse of it is exactly right, but both of them flawed. You should probably just keep quiet and go out and play your game.
From a kind of point of view for the All Blacks, they've obviously they've been mentioning in press conferences, Foster's put a big emphasis on improving the discipline going into this week. And the Wallabies have also flagged an issue in the line out with playing the arm and jumping across. They've asked the referee to look carefully at the way that the All Blacks are competing at the line out and make sure that it's legal as well.
That's a fine
which is
technical
definitely a factor.
It is a factor. And now normally when Aussies whinge about the ref, I'm less partial to it, but that's not whinge. No, that is reminding. I was going to say that's a point of difference. When you notice something and you can cite it pre-match, then that's actually the coach doing their job. You need to do that. You need to make the refs aware. And there was definitely elements of playing the arm that the All Blacks were. And if you get away with it, it's a good play. If the ref notices it, then it can snowball on you. He can be very punitive by the end. Your lineout can be dysfunctional. So hopefully the Wallabies can get a bit more off. Certainly they can start a bit less shocked. Like they were definitely unsettled by the loss of their first 4 lineouts. That was like partly the All Blacks getting in amongst it, but a few of them then, the third or fourth one I think was just an execution error from them. That's kind of born of that, getting a little wrapped by
it's all as a result of the pressure. Exactly right. But we're going to look now at the squads from the two teams. There's been a few changes from the Wallabies point of view, but the All Blacks have gone pretty much with the same outfit. They have Anton Leonard-Brown out of the team forced by injury, so Rico slots into 13 and Will Jordan comes in on the wing. That doesn't weaken them.
That doesn't weaken them at all. In fact, I would say Jordan is odds on to grab a try, as he almost always does. Whenever I watch him play, he seems to get a try. But we just rattled through who they have then. It's the same team as last week by and large, with those exceptions. You have Bauer, Taylor and Laulala in the front row. You have Retallick and Whitelock, the old band, starting again in the engine room. You have Akira Ioane, Dalton Papali'i and Ardi Sevilla making up the back row, with Ardi at 8. Very physical, very rambunctious. Maybe not quite as many poachers as they might have in other times, but really dangerous ball-carrying operators all throughout that pack. And then you have Aaron Smith and Richie Mo'unga, the halfback pairing, that were just awesome last week, and I dare say you'd expect similar from them. As you were saying, Havili and Ioane make up what we think on this podcast should probably be their centre partnership going forward. I think it's got all the hallmarks of a great all-black centre pairing, where they're both such flyers that can take a try from 80 out on their gas alone, but also great passing acumen and a lot of understanding of attack the space. So I think these two have potential all over them. And then Sevu Reece on one wing, Will Jordan on the other, Damien McKenzie at fullback. Awesome starting team with the bench impact Tauki Aho, Tui Nukuafe and Tauvo covering the front row. You have Scott Barrett and Luke Jacobson as cover in the loose forwards. TJ Perenara, Bowden Barrett and Geordie Barrett. You have this time we do have 3 Barretts to spring from the bench.
Provided Scott Barrett makes it to kick off.
This is true. We lost him and Dane Coles in the warm up last week, but Coles is still out, but Scott is still back in. And I think actually Foster was saying that Barrett could have played. They just had a bit of disruption in getting to the stadium. Actually, they were all a little late, and Coles pulled up with a calf thing in the warm up, and Scott Barrett obviously they had some kind of thing, so they had to replace him last minute. But it was no issue. They replaced him with. It was Tui Pilatu who had been left out, so they still have him. This is the All Black headache of just so much quality to try and squeeze into 23 jerseys.
Yeah, and on account of that, I'm surprised to not see them make a few more changes, frankly. Yeah. But it's definitely a point of interest. Foster did address it and basically said that his quote was that they've gone with continuity of performance to put pressure on the group to respond to the mistakes that they made and give us more of a complete performance.
Well, they definitely weren't. They weren't happy with their performance on balance. They were citing the start of last week and the end of last week as issues, and the discipline. So given the same charges, or pretty much the same charges, a chance to go again and improve is. I understand the thought process in that.
100%. The Wallabies, by contrast, have gone with a few different changes. Now they've gone with the same front row: Slipper, Paengamosa, and Al Nalatoa. Didn't bring Tupou in this time. They're going to keep that Bell, Uelese and Tupou combination to unleash later in the game.
Which, so if they can be within touching distance this time, that can be a game-changing thing.
Could be a real factor for sure. They have taken Salakai Alotu, who struggled a little bit last week with the physicality of it, for Darcy Swain and Matt Phillip, who have really been excellent. I think
to my mind, I think that is their 2 form lock. I think they're their 2 best locks available to pick as they currently stand. Now that could change if you get big Will Skelton in there, but I think at the moment those 2 are the guys. Yeah, they've brought Lockie Swinton back in, who's a real physical unit and an absolute workhorse. If he can just keep his discipline intact, he's a very good player. Keep the tackle height down. That's it. And wrap your arms. Yeah, and wrap your arms. But he's very physical and will be a useful entity on defence, especially when you just look at how badly Wilson struggled last week. He's brought in there to try and fix that. That moves Valatini to 8. Yeah, which is cool. It'd be nice to see him from 8 as well. Yeah, give him a chance. He's been carrying very well, and in the open space he has a little bit of turn of heel too, so maybe a few launching off scrum options for them potentially. So Hooper then takes the 7 jersey as always. Tate McDermott still at 9, Lolasio trusted at 10. Interestingly, Tuamua, who was good off the bench last week, but I am a perpetual skeptic of, comes in at 12. Paisami shifts out to 13. They drop Ikitau to the bench.
I wonder if that's got to do with Tamua as a place kicking option. Maybe. I wonder if they're worried.
Well,
about
it's certainly it's 10 cover because the other benchman is
Ikitau
and Hodge. So I think the idea is that if Lolosio is struggling, you shift Tamua into 10. Now I agree with you. I don't think that's a great idea myself.
Against the All Blacks, not
against
a huge
the All Blacks, and I think Paisami works better as a 12 too. And the other, like, it's great to see Corabetti back in the team.
That's the back three. It's Corabetti, Kellaway, who obviously got his try on debut, shifts to the right wing, and Tom Banks, who got 2 tries at fullback. But yes, Corabetti back is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and just rattling through that bench, then you have, as you were saying, Uelese. Scott Seo actually is in this week.
Oh, no Bell, sorry.
No Bell,
okay,
and with Taniela Tupou. And
Scott Seo in the World Cup year was excellent. He was one of the players of the World Cup from Australia, and if he can, I know he's been injured a lot in recent times, but if he can find some of that top scrummaging form, he could be very useful
for sure. Salakai Loto on the bench with Harry Wilson, guys with a bit more rest. Hopefully they can come in and do a great 20 to 30
they're still quality
shift.
players. They weren't performances worth dumping from the squad.
Indeed. Nick White is the big story, returning on the bench. He was obviously seminal to everything they were doing all of last year in the Tri-Nations. He's been out with with injury. He's obviously just back, so he's on the bench. Tate McDermott retains his place. It means that Jake Gordon, who has been struggling a bit for form, makes way, and I think that's a really good, positive thing. And then, as we were saying, Ikitau and Hodge offer the outside back cover, so there's no out-and-out 10 there on that bench, so you got to imagine Tamua is the plan. One of the guys who misses out, wasn't it Pataya was on the wing last week. He is now straight out. That's unfortunate. I do like him. He wasn't really involved last week as much as he ought to have been, which is probably, like, when you look at what Corabetti does, he is a winger, but he influences pretty much everything.
Corabetti just changes everything. He's a phenomenon.
I would have rather seen, maybe
Paisami
at 12 with Pataya at 13, and then Tamua is not on the pitch.
We'll see it in Bledisloe 3.
Hopefully so.
Probably. But yeah, no, that's the Wallaby squad. It's still a fine squad. I think they've made some good adjustments going into this week, and it'll set up a fascinating match. We're going to look through the game now from the point of view of each of the two teams, starting with obviously the hosts, the All Blacks.
Yeah.
From their point of view, I think the adjustment that they're going to look to make early doors is to be a little more direct.
Yeah.
I think you saw them make that adjustment in the second half of the first game, where they just started even doing little pick and jams, but Smith was keeping it quick, but often it was off 9 or even just one or two passes off the ruck, and it was they got more direct. They sat the Wallabies down. The Wallabies didn't know how to cope with it because they weren't able to slow it up, because the All Blacks were winning contacts and clearing the ruck so quickly. And then eventually the space was there for the Mackenzie try.
The speed is the key to them, but also patience. Like, his speed without patience is just frenetic and wild, and it gets gobbled up. But if you can do speed and be pragmatic in that approach, I think it'll pay dividends. Like, they were guilty of going wide before they'd earned the right to it. As you said, they didn't sit them down last week. It's going to be key to them to try and just occupy the inside shoulder of guys like you have Tamua now at 12, who's a bit more of a 10/12. You have Paisami, who defended really well last week at 12, shifted out one more to where it's much more difficult. I think they'll find a lot of dividends by testing that exact channel and going direct. That
Lolosio Tuamua channel, where presumably the Wallabies will be looking to get the likes of Swinton in to save them, but that like sitting those guys down through Havili, either getting an offload away from that and clearing the run quickly and then going wide.
Then you're going to overload poor Paisami if those two guys are occupied and Paisami has a decision to make, and he has Rico Ioane one side and Havili and
Mackenzie running an arc outside him.
It's a near impossible task for any 13.
That's the killer. So if they can they do need to get on top of those physical contacts, and in moments the Wallabies did frustrate them when they were on the ball, and so they will have to be careful not to lose the plot if they are getting knocked backwards, because initially it's going to be about picking clean lines, getting over the gain line, clearing the ruck and generating some quick ball, and then once they do that and they play direct, and then the Wallabies are going backwards and they can't really set themselves, that's when the All Blacks become so good, because Aaron Smith will just force a really quick tempo on them, and then put them under all kinds of pressure, suck them in, keep them going backwards until the space is there, and that's when you get it
That's
wide.
When we might see that variety of attack that we did see in the beginning of this season in what they were doing against Fiji, and just some of the, as you were putting a cheat code rugby of just some of the catch pass from them. Didn't get to see that quite in this game until in the first game until the third quarter. This time, if they succeed in sitting them down, which will be their plan, and they keep their discipline, then you might even earlier in the game be able to see some of that razzle dazzle rugby that we do know so well from the All Blacks. And with that centre pairing now with Rico and Tavili, there's all kinds of scope for guys like Jordan to be grabbing a brace.
Yeah, and there's scope for Rico to be the guy picking the short line as well. There's really, like, because he's so quick, he could really work as a guy just picking that narrow arc, crushing, trying to force Paisami in or force Tamua to play him, and then just getting over the gain line, and then all of a sudden the ball is back and Aaron Smith is there.
Either the ball's back or he gets an offload, because he's a game for that too.
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
like if they can force a non-dominant tackle from someone like Tamua or Paisami, where he's just around the hip, that's when they are at their best, when they're in that moment of just recognizing that there's a chance to run a lovely aggressive support line, a trail line for a dominant contact, and it's offload try is very normally the recipe.
Yeah, and the initial battle, the forwards will still have to be up for it, as they always are. I mean, they will have to be on Hooper watch when they're trying to get those momentum phases going, not allowing the jackal steal to come in and get them. Even Paisami can get a jackal steal, so they'll have to be mindful of that. They'll have to clear the ruck really well. They'll have to be across it when they are picking the short line, hitting that ruck and clearing it really well. To be
fair, they've picked a back row that cover a lot of ground very quickly as well, so they are all very good at resourcing offensive breakdowns. They just clear them so quick. Like it's you don't even look at it as such a technical thing. Like very often, like even watching the Lions tour, the breakdown's more of a tussle, but when the All Blacks are in their flow, like the guys clear it so efficiently that there's very little competition even. Like they're there so instantaneously, and they're in a position that it's not even competitive, and then Aaron Smith is just clearing it in 2 seconds flat, that there's just the fact that there's no chance for those Pocock and Hooper things stands to the credit of their back row, who do a load of work on offense that way. Yeah,
absolutely, and they'll have to be on their best blow for that, because the Wallabies will be improved. They made some tough adjustments up front. I think the scrum battle will still be fascinating to see if Laulala can get up on top of Slipper again, to see if Retallick and Whitelock can disrupt the Wallaby line-out ball. They'll have to be cleaner. They'll have to mind the penalty count. I think that's a huge point of emphasis for them this week. They will have to check themselves a little bit on defense as well, not be silly, and force the Wallabies into making errors. I mean, that was it when they held their width and tackled well against the Wallabies. They did force Paisami ended up forcing a pass which Mo'unga read, and that yielded a try. But all too often they impatiently gave penalties away and let the Wallabies
didn't allow the defensive try to come about from a frustrated and impatient Wallabies pass that can be there if you just defend them accurately and with discipline for a while. There's also, like, well, obviously I was going to cite someone needs to be on Tupou watch. They need to be mindful of the fact that Tupou is going to be introduced to the game, and when he be on your guard, because he's one of those guys that can game break you. You do need to man mark him. If he's on the ball, it's 2 people need to hit him all the time, and at scrum time it's just a tough task for them. I think they'll want to be out of sight before it comes to that. They want to punish the Wallabies for keeping him on the bench rather than starting with him. That's their idea.
You've got to get on top of that forward pack early doors, disrupt the line out, take that away from the Wallabies. Don't give them the easy entrances through penalties and just suffocate them and be the more clinical team then. But if you can take the Wallabies set piece away, I think that answers a lot of your defensive quandaries. But on D, just being physical, being in the Wallaby faces and keeping your width and then sticking your tackles. Nothing fancy, just minding that discipline. I think that
then when there's a poach there, take it. Because as demonstrated, the Wallabies will leave it out there every once in a while. So just choose your moments rather than putting your hands in every ruck.
They do have to be mindful of Corabetti though. That's the danger. That is the danger.
This time he is back, and that is a point of difference. Pataya was quiet out on the wing last week, whereas Corabetti is anything but.
I feel
whenever
confident
he plays.
in saying he won't be. He just if it's not coming his way, he just gets off his wing and carries off 9 off anyone, and is dynamic and class while doing it.
It's true, and he's just when you look at his highlight reel from last year's Tri Nations, like he does so much for them, and then even more recently the French series, he's just, when he's on the pitch, he's one of those guys that it's a tough one, because like sometimes you watch him in the regular season or Super Rugby AU and he doesn't get quite as much off, and you'd be kind of thinking like, oh, maybe rest Corabetti and we'll pick Banks with Wright or something. But it's like when he pulls a Wallaby jersey on, he becomes a man possessed. Like he's player. awesome in green and gold. So from a Kiwi point of view, you gotta make sure it's not about him. To be honest, if you're gonna win the game, you win it inside the wingers. Make sure it's not about him. But obviously, whenever he gets the ball or even gets one out from the guy with the ball, alarm bells should be ringing from a defensive point of view. That's the danger right there. It's a Corabetti shaped danger.
Yeah, and the rest of it writes itself. I mean, they got TJ Perinara to come on, a couple of jackal steals from him, but just in the big moments in the third quarter, just before half time, transition, if they can force turnovers on defense and find the tries that way. They're just such a hungry, class, clinical team.
I wouldn't mind seeing as well as transition, which we know is their MO, but also for first phase strike moves, which we were citing as a thing.
More of an Aussie thing.
Well, it is. But we saw from France, like the Aussies are guilty sometimes of just setting up a little wrong, and if they can be heads up enough to recognise that and have a play call in mind to expose it, it would be nice to see that from the All Blacks. Like just punished in the most ruthless clinicality is just striking off first phase, where there's not even a ruck before it's a try, and the Wallabies do offer that up sometimes with their shape, and they've chopped and changed in the back line now, and you have Tamua in there at 12, Paisami 1 out. I feel like once or twice there might be it could be from a scrum even 50 metres out, but there's definitely a first phase try out there for the All Blacks if they can spot it and if they can execute to take it. I don't know if they will, but it's a good little work on for them. Yeah,
absolutely. And from the Wallabies point of view, obviously they're going to have to be physical. They're going to have to step up. I think they've made the right changes. But the game starts with them. If the All Blacks, like the game started last week pretty okay for them. The only issue was the set piece, but they managed to hold their width and they weren't being relentlessly physically beaten on the defensive side of it until the second half. I think they have to be mentally ready for a more direct All Black team. I think Lachlan Swinton coming into the team is
Swinton,
huge.
Phillip and Swain will have to get through a boatload of tight work, because I actually think Hooper on the D-line is a little bit wider than those guys, and I think they might be going inside Hooper's channel this time. It'll come down to those tight guys.
And they'll try and be quick while they're doing it, but that's it. If the Wallabies can execute some physical sort of slow tackles, stopping them behind the game line.
One phase in every 3, if you can stop them or drive them back, that's enough to stutter them such that they probably kick it. But if they don't, conversely, if they don't drive them back 3 phases in a row and in the tight, then you're going to see Rico or someone on the ball in space.
Going to be insanely tough. But they defended really well to begin the game last week. They need to develop a bit of that. They need to be ready for the physical challenge. But if they can get back on top, that's a good start for them. And then the other key adjustment that they're going to have to look at is the set piece, the line out in particular, but also the scrum. Frankly, Slipper, Payang, and Amosa and Alatoa.
They definitely have a better chance this week because they haven't been out in the media saying they're going to dominate the All Blacks at scrum time. So that is good for them. It means that they might have a chance of doing that. But you're right. The line out was actually the more glaring concern in the opening quarter, was that they couldn't get any of that.
But then the first points came from a lost scrum penalty as well. So it was both. But they the set piece is an area of strength for the Wallaby team. They like to strike off them. They can be penalty generators, especially when those guys on the bench come on. But they have a good maul. They trust it. They have a big, strong pack. I think Swain and Phillip and Swinton only makes them a bigger pack, not a smaller pack. So they're big and strong. I think they need to be attacking the All Blacks in these areas, getting being clean at the line out and going to the maul, but also they obviously have their strike plays with inside runners, getting Corabetti on the ball early, all of that. Their attack is a lovely machine when it rumbles, and it feels so close to clicking into gear in terms of some of those back plays, and then it sometimes falls apart right at the last hurdle. But when they're at their best, they are brilliant to watch. On all facets. But I think if this game starts up front, and for the Wallabies, they're just thinking, listen, let's forget about the rest of the game, let's win the forward battle. If we can win the forward battle, we have a really good chance.
You do. The other thing, once you win that forward battle or even achieve parity, clinicality does become pretty pivotal. And once again, like with the 12 points left behind last week, like place kicking is a part of that. Place kicking is a concern off last week, obviously, and it'll be on. I would trust giving Lolosio the duty from the off and a chance to make amends. I actually think that's the right thing.
He's growing as a player. I think so. He's still young, but he's very young developing.
Very young to be a test 10. Like, he's understudy to James O'Connor really, but the fact that O'Connor's injured means he's in here for Bledisloe 2 games in a row, Eden Park. But I still think, as a learning experience, as a developmental stage for the next World Cup, you'll want him having kicked those kicks, having missed those kicks in Eden Park last week, and if he can remedy that this week and be clinical. But either like both conversions and threes, they will probably need both tries and threes. They need to just make their forays into the All Black territory tell on the scoreboard. It's always a factor for them. They can play such beautiful sequences of rugby, but often they aren't as clinical as they ought to be. And like you'd say they're more of an attacking side than the box traditionally, but there's no way you could argue they're a more clinical side this year. Like not right now. The box.
But I feel like they're not far away.
No, they aren't. And this could be a game if they can manage to break this Eden Park hoodoo. And look, like as tough as that is to imagine, like the Wallabies are probably one of the more likely ones to end that Eden Park text just by virtue of playing them so often. Yeah. But yeah, if it's to happen at all, it'll involve them having a near flawless display from the tee from Lolosio or Tamua or whoever, but also just knowing when to go for the try and executing from them all,
winning penalties,
knowing
penalties.
when to take three as well. Sometimes they're a little naive in that too, and they're often guilty of leaving points out there that are there for them, and they were guilty of that again last week.
5 minutes before half time, if you could not give easy entrances to the All Blacks, that'd be great. It's amazing how teams just can shoot themselves in the foot, and just fail to appreciate when the All Blacks are most dangerous, which is either side of half time, always and forever.
Yes,
they have to be mindful.
That is the main thing that you could flip on you. If you could change that from last week, is just if you can go in either 1 point down or 1 point up at half time, that's a result.
Last score before the half. That's
such a pivotal one. And then the third quarter, you gotta mind the third quarter. I mean, it's been too often that they've just been blown away by this All Black side in that period of play.
Cheap entrances. Obviously, the All Blacks really do turn it on. The defense is a little more tired and has to still be awake and alive to the pressure of things. And if one loose kick is all it can take sometimes before it snowballs on you. You know, so they have to be sharp and accurate as well as physical throughout. But they're going to need to. They're going to need to put points on
this time last year when they were in that second test after the draw, and they were in the game, and it was like a 1-score game, and then it was the third quarter again, and it was a loose kick down the middle of the field, and then suddenly Caleb Clark's rampaging back, and then it's a try, and that's like too easy to do when you just switch off. And it's got to be a collective awareness that, like, not only should you not switch off, I know you're getting tired, you've just had break in play in half time, you're just having subs start to be introduced, it's easy to get disjointed, but there has to be an appreciation of just how often that punishes them, and this team specifically punishes them in those moments for those errors, and they do need to be remedied this time around if they're to have any success. Yeah,
I would agree with that. The Wallabies, it's mostly about the pack, it's mostly about the physicality and then the clinicality on top of that as well. We'll see how well the likes of Tamua hold up to the physicality of the All Blacks on defence. It's massively important.
Yeah, it is.
Lockie Swinton's going to take on a huge job. All of that's going to be massively important. But they do have, in my view, the capacity to put a performance together. Well, we know from last year they got a win against them. They can beat them.
They can.
When they play their best game and the All Blacks are a little sloppy and they get after them, if they have the quality.
Upset their rhythm with a bit of proactive defense, strong contacts being won when you're defending them, and then turnover steals, like between Hooper and Valentini as well. They have probably more poach acumen than the All Black pack do in terms of their back row. Their back row are pit for a different purpose.
Knows his way around a poach.
Does know his way around a poach. Like, it's not to say it won't be taken when it's there, and both of these sides are as guilty as each other for sometimes leaving it right there, to the point where even little TJ will be grabbing a steal if the guy just lands at his feet and there's no one there to resource it, and I'm like, hello, give me that ball.
TJ he's one of their better poachmen.
To be fair, that's true. They need to be savvy enough to recognise when to do that, when not to, because the difference between a great game-winning steal or a massive turnover steal versus a free entrance is kind of minuscule in terms of the dynamics of the breakdown and stuff, and they have to be the smart team to recognise that. If they're the dumber team on the pitch, they will lose it, but they will lose it by quite a distance. But if they can be the smarter team than the All Blacks, frustrate them into being the penalty machines that they've shown capacity to be, that's when they can just apply pressure slowly, allow them to kind of eat themselves with the discipline thing, and with the using the romanticism of some of their passing play can sometimes leave them isolated if you're calm and effective on D. And that is the Wallaby picture if they are to win this game. If they're to create history and overturn this Eden Park hoodoo, it involves them being savvy, wily, clinical, and ultimately taking the game just. That's the dream. That's the dream.
Is that how you see it going?
No. That is what I would like. That is what I would like to see happen. I'd like to see a really savvy, because Wallaby rugby at its best is some razzle dazzle attack, but is pretty cunning. They're pretty wily kind of characters, and that's them at their best. At their worst, they're downright stupid as well. And that's frustrating, the kind of schizophrenic nature of it. I think in Eden Park as well, with all that pressure off the back of it, I think the All Blacks will ultimately be the calmer team and be the slightly more clinical team. Not without some great Wallaby moments and some great Wallaby performances, but I think ultimately the All Blacks will win, probably by about 12 or 15 this time, maybe even more. I think no, I'm not writing them off. I think the All Blacks are going to play better.
Yeah, I think they might play better. All right, I like the balance of the Wallaby team, which is why I'll definitely take the under on that.
Okay.
I think the Wallabies will mix it in the first half. I don't see the All Blacks blowing them away early. I think the Wallabies will be physical. I think it'll be tight early doors. I wonder about that period before half time. I fear
and after it.
Before and after half time, I would fear for the Wallabies then. But then I would back their bounce back ability with that forward,
the bench.
That forward front trio to come on. I would back them to do well in that. It's a question of how clinical they can be, as always. Can they get the ball wide? How clunky is the offense going to be with Lolosio, Tamua and Paisami? Is that going to work? It didn't against France.
Can Nick White make good impact off the bench? Can Ikitau make good impact off the bench? Definitely. Will they?
So
I hope so.
I feel like they might be behind by a score or maybe 10 points going into the last quarter, but might edge the last quarter as they did this week. I think they are. I think even watching the Reds this year, the way they finished games was always very strong.
Very impressive. Yeah, that's true.
So I just think they do have an engine. I think Tupou is a complete game breaker. I think Corabetti is a difference maker. I expect to see him heavily involved.
Wouldn't be surprised to see him with a try or two.
So for me, I think it's probably a one-score game, but to the All Blacks, I think it could be a cracker, ladies.
I do think
that's my prediction. I think it's going to be just a really fun game. Lots of good offense. Tries either way. Truly. Nothing for the media to complain about. I think it's going to be a class game of rugby. Yeah. So if you have the means at all, I would encourage you all to watch it. As you well know, Bledisloe 2, the opening game of the Rugby Championship of 2021 as well, which is just a glorious competition.
A great showpiece event to try and kick it all off as well.
Absolutely, Thanks for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed that video, please be sure to like and subscribe. And hey, if you have an opinion of your own, if you disagree with what we're saying, leave a comment down below. We might just get back to you.